Morning, everybody. This is Councilmember Wesley Hudson. I would like to call the Prosperity and Livability Committee to order. Our first item up is a discussion of the GoFar sponsorship for fall 2021. And Eric Almeida is stepping to the podium.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, committee. As you know, the city sponsors the GoFar race. They hold 2 races annually. The city typically sponsors the spring event. The GoFar folks have reached out and asked if we would be willing to sponsor the fall event as well this year. This was due to the fact that last year during COVID, they did cancel their spring event. So they're just asking us for that consideration. We have worked with staff to estimate the in-kind value of that sponsorship, and it's estimated that the in-kind cost would be about $4,400. The fall race is a little bit more expensive to put on just due to the fact that they run that here in downtown as opposed to up at Piedmont Center. So it does require just a little bit more resources from our end to block the streets and that type of thing, and have barricades and police presence. Is there any questions that you may have that I can answer?
This is all very straightforward. I make a motion we approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? If not, do I need to call roll?
Yes.
I need to, okay. Councilmember Holmes, how do you vote? Aye. Councilmember Peters?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones. Sorry, Cyril. Why is it always you? It's like.
Well, I'm Jones Jefferson today.
Sorry, Cyril. Councilmember Jefferson.
Aye.
And Chairman votes aye. That motion passes. Our second item up is an update from the Marketing and Branding Task Force, and is who's doing this with Jerome?
Yes, John and I will.
Good morning. Good morning.
Floor is
Good morning,
yours.
Mr. Chair, members of the P&L Committee. This is Jerron Hollis. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Several months ago, the council tasked the P&L committee, which ended up in the Marketing and Branding Task Force, to look into a campaign that would really get into the city's marketing and branding. We were able to pull together stakeholders from various community groups, and what you should have is a copy of the latest draft of an RFP, and Ryan Ferguson is there on the team, and he's got a tentative timeline of what the rollout would look like. So at this point, we would like for the staff's asking for the committee to look at that timeline and look at that RFP, and at the direction of the manager, get steps for moving forward to follow the city's RFP process to put this in place as it seems fit. And I'll be glad to answer any questions, or Councilmember Holmes is the liaison for the task force. Be glad to defer it to him at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Any questions for you?
No, I think we have taken great pains to go through several iterations of this RFP. We've got some great input from our task force members, and staff has done a great job in assembling this. It's gone through purchasing. And so I think at this point, any input that remains about the RFP, I think we sent it out to the task force for last minute review. We didn't get back any necessary any changes to the RFP as constructed. So I think at this point we're ready for release, and I think we're pretty excited about the opportunity to take on this task. I know it's been at least 2 decades since we addressed the branding of the city. Everything associated with the High Point brand. And I think, hopefully this will be a kind of a once in a generation thing that we do to brand High Point going into the future. So I guess the question that I've been posed is, all right, so we're doing a lot of things on the branding side. The marketing piece of it, how will that be addressed? I've had that question come up. So if you want to give us some insight on that,
Sure.
Jerron, and
John, you want to take that? You want me?
Yeah, Ryan can speak to that in person. Ryan, please.
So basically, when we came to you with our plan, it is to initially establish what our brand is. Once we do that, again, it's more than just a logo. It's more than a tagline. It's who we are and what we are. It's how we tell our story. So once we establish that brand and we establish our vision moving forward, then we'll take that and go out and then market the city that way. So branding plan will come first and then marketing thereafter. This RFP will kind of combine both of those. It'll kind of give us what our goal is and then the approach on how to get it. And then from there, my team then can take over and continue marketing the city the way that we need to. So some people think that the difference between marketing and branding is marketing is asking someone out on a date and branding is them saying yes and why they say yes. So essentially, like I said, we're going to establish that brand, establish our story, and then we're going to spread it to the world.
so in the marketing piece of it, is it still an opportunity if the city needs to scale this project to bring in external resources on the marketing side, as we're planning to do with the branding side?
So this RFP is going to kind of combine a little bit of both of those. It's going to, like I said, it's going to give us our brand and kickstart our marketing plan. And then from there, our marketing team can run with that plan. We can then take a look at future years of getting some external assistance. This basically is basically finding what our brand is, finding who we are, and then establishing a marketing plan to then take that forward.
And so that marketing plan could include the use of external firms to assist the city,
Sure,
if necessary.
sure.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, one of the important things to notice in this RFP, and Ryan can talk about this a little bit, is the idea of placemaking, place branding. And we've had a lot of interest in people from various sectors, local and national, that have had questions. I think it's important to make a distinction. What we're trying to make sure that we do is find a vendor who has experience specifically in this kind of branding for a municipality. When you talk about a project like this, it's different than branding a can of Coke or a particular sports team or what have you. So place branding, place making is an important distinction that's in this RFP. So as we look for the most qualified, we're specifically looking for that track record of having done this for the vendor, for the company, having done this successfully in other places before, as one of the criteria that's important for moving forward on successful selection.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, sir. Questions, Mr. Chairman. This is Councilman Jefferson. So contract commences in January. While I know we likely have to work with the vendor to be clear in terms of the rest of what comes after that, do we at least have an estimation of the timeline that it'll take for us to get to where we have that plan and we have that brand strategy?
So typically, this is kind of an estimate just based off of today's meeting. Typically, we will work with that firm that we choose. It'll probably be between 9 to 12 months. So we're looking at would be probably January of 22 that we would start. We would have our brand, we would have our tools, we would have everything that we need to move forward to really roll that.
January 23?
23, sorry. It's 21 right now. I'm still thinking it's 2020. Yes, 23.
Okay. in terms of the RFP process, I'm a little curious because we've got 11 days between RFP being issued and then questions pertaining to RFP having to be returned. Assuming that we're casting a wide net on this, what I've found, and just FYI, I'm speaking from experience as someone who responds to RFPs all the time. When that net gets cast far and wide, I mean, heck, it's going to take a little time for some people just to get it, process, think about it, talk through with their team, and send questions. Is it at least possible, and now I'm not looking at any other dates here, but really it's the date for when questions are due by and then response to those questions. Is it possible for that to be pushed back, or do we at least have a reasoning why we chose only 11 days to give folks?
So this.
Councilman Jefferson.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jerome.
Yes, so the direction that we have here with the RFP timeline, we worked really closely with Eric Conti and purchasing. If there's some questions about the responsiveness or the ability to respond, we can go to purchasing and make sure we're within the guidelines of what flexibility we have in the guidelines of how we normally issue an RFP. But that's definitely something that we can circle back with them and check to make sure that we're maximizing that time, but also staying within our procedure and our process. Another thing I wanted to add in that timeline after we issue the contract, Ryan had mentioned the 9 to 12 months. A part of that process is the information gathering. The company that comes in will be collecting data in a number of ways, talking to members of the community, getting feedback. So it's not something where someone's coming in and just giving us recommendations and offering a plan. It's a plan based on data and research and community feedback. So that for some, that 9 to 12 month timeline might sound a little lengthy, but there are a lot of steps that we want to include to make sure this is done right.
No, I actually thought the 9 to 12 months was pretty short, but no, that I appreciate the information. This whole thing in terms of when questions go out, if we've got policies on that, then I completely understand that. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking our typical purchasing happens with vendors within a certain footprint regionally. But this branding thing is something you do once in a generation. God forbid, there's a great vendor somewhere that's not within that usual footprint who usually gets our stuff. And maybe it just doesn't hit their funnel or pipeline until a week after we issue it. That's the only thoughts. I mean, heck, do what you got to do. I just want to ensure that we have the best chances. I am curious about the marketing thing, and I appreciate the questions, Councilman Holmes, that you kind of asked around that. I know that my initial thinking on this was, okay, great, we get the branding done, and then marketing team assesses and takes that plan and grows with it. I would imagine, and this isn't a forecast or assume anything, but I would imagine at a certain point, because I think to date, a lot of the scope of what we've done in terms of marketing have been marketing in terms of the City of High Point government organization, and not so much marketing the City of High Point to young professional coming out of San Francisco, or corporate exec in Texas, or warehouse manufacturer in New York. You know what I mean? And so there's just a lot of thoughts I'm thinking around that, but I guess those are really things we talk about as we get down the road. Appreciate this process. This has been fantastic. Councilman Holmes, Ryan, thank you guys.
Ryan, just for clarification, could you explain how we're distributing the RFP and the net that we're casting, how far it is regionally, nationally,
Sure.
globally?
So our team has done a lot of research on national place branding firms, place marketing firms. We've looked at actually across the world. I don't say that we're probably going to get some from Australia, but we've got a list of firms that are nationally known that are experienced in what this is. Plus, we have a list from some of the members that were on the marketing and branding task force, more local, more regional people that I want everybody to be able to have a chance to, bid on this project. We do have specifications in there specifically for people with experience in place branding and place marketing. Nothing against Joe's Marketing Shop on Main Street, USA. Everybody can, a lot of people can build a brand and can make a logo. I can make a great logo. That doesn't mean that I am a place brander. So those are kind of some of the stipulations that are in that RFP. And we were pretty specific about to make sure that we have, the best of the best is going to be able to do that within, what we need to have done.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
And also for clarification, I think that, Councilman Holmes has, done a really great task force and included a lot of the groups that are also engaging in marketing and branding to try to kind of really not duplicate efforts and have a very synergized
Exactly.
message. So I think
And
that
that's,
the task force has done a
to
great job.
Councilman Jefferson's
Good job.
point, they were involved in this and it's, the one thing is that the city government versus the city as a whole versus getting people from Texas here. We had everybody involved. So this is something that is going to involve every one of our partners that hopefully they can jump on board and ride the wave with us as well. So yes, that's.
Great job.
And just to Councilman Jefferson's point, the piece of this that will get to the heart of marketing the city versus the government is when this place branding firm comes in, they will speak to our local community. They will have a heartbeat of a pulse of where our current state is, and then they will develop our brand around that. So when we release this to the world, this will take into account not only the stakeholders here, but also the stakeholders written large throughout the community. So we'll get a chance to find out who we currently are and then who we want to be 25, 30, 40 years from now. So
Remind me, we probably talked about this, so forgive me for forgetting. Do we already have a budget amount allocated for a cap on this when it goes out, or are we having them come back to us with the proposed amount and then we kind of do that there?
Sure. Jerome, you want to take this? You want me to take it?
Yeah, so there's been some discussion, there was some discussion on the task force about offering an amount that we were willing to spend. And then there was some discussion about not doing that, and great arguments on both sides of that. I think at this point, we have not, council has not specifically established a budget for this. We tried to write the RFP in such a way and have it specific enough where we would know with these vendors returning the information exactly what we were looking for and being able to sort of compare apples to apples to get an idea of cost. But some of that would be informed by what we get back. And just like with some of the other RFP processes, when we have someone that stands out that is recommended, they will have, of course, a charge or a price that they would have, but we haven't established a specific budget or so you won't see in the RFP a cap or a dollar limit that's included in what you have in front of you today.
Yeah, but what do we at least have allocated or not allocated, but earmarked? I mean, when we send out RFPs, okay, all right. I mean, okay. Just a lot of thoughts going through.
Request for proposals for services.
Mm.
So your service level could be
Anything. So then it's just about checking the couch corners to see what corners we got. Okay.
I think this is Tasha looking for. I think the other part that this gives the committee the opportunity to do is you can narrow the scope based on the proposals that you receive. So you select the person that you want to work with, and then you have some negotiations with them among, these are the things that are critical for us. So we want to make sure these are included, and some other things you may choose to wait on. And then you work to establish the budget based on what the committee decides they would like to see happen.
So really, there's not any action for us to take today, right? This is just an update. You got to go and put it out there. Okay. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Shout out
Any
to
further
you.
questions? If not, thank you. Thank you for the update. Looks like we're going in great direction. Our next presentation is by Patrick Harmon on the bridge project. And as he comes to the podium, can you Patrick, can you introduce the folks that are with you today so that we know who's supporting? It's a big bunch that we have. Good crowd, good looking crowd.
I'll introduce everybody. So when I talk about the bridge project, is a collaboration of many partners around the community, and these are some of the folks I've talked to about the bridge project and their excitement for what is possible with the bridge project. So we have folks from High Point University, Triad Health Project, Reading Connections, Growing High Point, the library, YWCA, Community Clinic, Great High Point Food Alliance, American Business. So they're just here to kind of demonstrate that, but been working the phones, I guess, to talk to people about the project. I do want to briefly mention, so we had the community read last night at the author talk. The book is called Trust First. Hopefully all you guys read it. It's really about empathy into action, because we really need to sort of step up our game. I mean, in our city and our country, in terms of caring for our brothers and sisters. And so Resilience High Point was a partner in the community read, and we created a compassion charter. We're going to be introducing to the community. It was supposed to be yesterday, but now we're looking at doing a signing ceremony, Unity Festival, which is October 9th. So we would like the city to participate in the signing of the charter. And it's really about an act of intention of understanding our neighbors and ourselves and being committed to making a better community with humility. The author last night mentioned that the tagline on the book is about second chances, but he was saying a lot of the folks who actually come to them in the City Refuge haven't had a first chance. And so that understanding that he's learned is kind of part of the compassion charter. It's like learning and unlearning what we think we know and we really don't know. Because we really want to create a movement here in town. Everybody's engaged in making High Point a better place. Because if High Point is a compassionate community, that tagline behind you guys will happen. So that's my marketing pitch, the most compassionate city in America. And that's for free. So, if you want me to, there you go. So I'm here to help you guys, right? And so if I need to come to another meeting and talk a little bit more about the charter, I'd be more than happy to do it. So the bridge proposal. So this is something we've been working on the last few months that got inspired initially because the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a lot more grant money available, and we were talking urban ag type stuff. And then we got the picture kept on getting bigger and bigger because the ARP funds you guys got, that there's a moment for these funds to do something impactful and not just cover a budget deficit. And so that's what I'm encouraging guys to do with that money, not just this bridge proposal, but just in general. This is a moment to take advantage of. It's like manna from heaven. So just a high level look at it. So it's a comprehensive community-based center that's going to address healthy food access, accessing health services, job skill development, and youth services, which is why all these people are out here, because they all do those sorts of things. And the idea is to house it at the soon-to-be former police station and utilize Moorhead Rec Center for a lot of the youth-based programs. And the idea is we will definitely have an advisory and planning committee that involves the city, the community members, a lot of these folks here, because there's a lot of planning to be done, as you'll figure out when I walk you through this. So there's three major partners. It's the foundation, Growing High Point, and then Resilience High Point. So I just, that's a brief overview. So our foundation, we've invested over $2.5 million in the 27260 zip code over the last decade or so. And these are just some examples of the things we've done. A lot of community engagement, community empowerment work, a lot of grassroots work, which is odd for a foundation to say. A lot of partners that we've been working with over the years to sort of make life better for our fellow residents here in High Point. And one of those efforts was Growing High Point, which is a foundation initiative initially in 2016. It's its own 501c3 now, and really focuses on urban agriculture. There's really the three E's: entrepreneurship, empowerment, and engagement with community. And so we support community gardens. There's urban farms. We have 5 urban farm leaders. There's a food hub, and we started, of course, the mobile grocery store back in March, thanks to the city, that's serving low-income communities. And then the other major partner is Resilience High Point, something the foundation started in 2019. It's really to encourage collaboration and innovation for all of us to get to know each other and what we do, and to really make progress on some of the issues that confront the city. So we've been having these convenings to encourage that. And when COVID-19 struck early last year, we developed the High Point Resources website to kind of keep people up to date. Because if you remember in the early days of the pandemic, everything was fast and furious. I mean, had no idea what was going on because none of us had lived through a pandemic before. So that website served that purpose of educating the community about what was going on and the resources that were coming available as time went on. And then again, thanks to the city, we did the sanitation stations for about 9 months to serve our homeless population here in town. So that's just a more recent effort of the foundation. So those are kind of the 3 major partners of this. And so it's the overall objective to bridge the gaps in community resources so everybody can access what they need to have healthy, fulfilling lives, which is kind of your motto right back there behind you guys, which is why it's called the bridge. So again, there's three areas this initiative will target. One of them is healthy food access. I think the pandemic highlighted a lot of the disparities in accessing healthy food because food prices went up. The food system as it stands was having all kinds of problems. It's very fragile, even though it's very large. And then High Point University did a study about food access, and about a quarter of residents in the 27260 zip code have trouble meeting their food needs for lack of funds. Health services. What happens is if you're living in a food desert, you're probably in a medical desert. And so we need to bring those services to the same areas. And there's life expectancy varies greatly by census tract. I mean, almost it's 17 years between the lowest life expectancy and the highest in our community. And if you have a medical desert, you're also going to have higher hospitalization rates. And then the third thing is support for youth. For Resilience High Point did a needs assessment early on to help frame our work. And one of the recommendations was the need for more social and recreational opportunities for youth. And Resilience High Point is really concerned about providing protective factors for youth and families. So when they enter crises, we can direct them to resources, and that can also get the support they need as they deal with things. And so that we kind of want to wrap our arms around the community with these fine folks over here. All right, so this is a lovely graphic my daughter did. So this kind of gives you the scope of what is being proposed with the food access, the local food system development, a lot of entrepreneurship and business development with that, and then the access to health services, and then the youth component. And the list of partner organizations. If you read the proposals, there's a lot more organizations listed in the proposal, but these are the folks I've actually talked to who are excited about participating in the bridge project. It's just a nice summary of what we're trying to do. So we're sort of breaking it down into the 3 different areas. So healthy food access, create a model farm, paid apprenticeship programs for folks to grow and sell. And that'll serve the bodega, farm stands in neighborhoods. Hopefully at some point we'll get the home delivery, right, Willa? And then servicing restaurants as well. There's a lot of business development possibilities with food and value added. So the shared use kitchen is something the small scale manufacturing task force was kicking around ideas for. So there's an opportunity to do that here, do value added products. Because in the summertime, when you get tomatoes coming out your ears, what are you going to do with them? You can create salsa and that sort of thing. So a lot of agribusiness development. And in my work, I've run across people who have great pie recipes, this, that, and the other, but they need a place to do their business development. And so those are some of the outcomes that we hope to achieve with producing food insecurity and increasing access to healthy foods, and then all the job creation stuff. And then access to health services, opportunities to learn about healthy lifestyles, been meeting with High Point University, all the health sciences programs. They have, physician assistant program, a pharmacy, physical therapy. They're going to have a dental program. They're going to have a nursing program. So there's an opportunity for a lot of collaboration with High Point University and others as well who I've not talked to yet. So, so some of the outcomes increased healthy lifestyles and habits, better family functioning as a result of that work. And the last one is increasing support for youth. Again, utilizing Moorhead to do a lot of the youth serving program for nutrition, academic support, physical activity and the like. They also like to get the youth involved in paid apprenticeships to do some of the farming in the summertime and then leadership development. And you'll see the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve for our youth in our community. There's a lot of space out there, as you guys know, to do a lot of innovative programming. And then the last two components that are really critical is community outreach. You'll see the proposal proposing 2 positions to build relationships with the community, sort of to publicize the bridge and get people engaged in the bridge so they can understand what was possible in their community. So that's a really key element. That's one of the things in our work with the door knocking and the Backs Connect program. That's critical, building relationships with people, and that takes time. And so that's why we need 2 people. And then the other one is to have a police substation at the old police station, really to build relationships with the community and trust in the police. So that's the final 2 elements of that. And so we're talking about utilizing existing assets, sort of an asset-based approach to this initiative. So we have the soon-to-be formed police station. As you guys know, it's a large facility. There's a lot of land that we can do a model farm on. And they got that lovely garage for a food hub. Our food hub on Washington Street is quite small, and we're already sort of busting out the seams, and it's a beautiful garage over there. So I'm really excited to see that. And then the Moorhead Rec Center, if you guys remember, there was a discussion about closing it with the budget crisis last year, because it's the most underutilized recreation center in town. And so we can partner with the city to do a lot of programming, not just for the youth, also the community. We're really excited about. Just a quick overview of staffing. So there's 5 positions to be filled, to sort of do a lot of the coordination and planning and developing funds, because as I'll talk about in a minute, eventually it's going to be funded to be self-sufficient and getting funding from other sources. So that's kind of the staffing for the health services and youth access, all that coordination, because there's a lot to be done. A lot of planning, certainly in the first couple of years. I mean, particularly with the health services. The agriculture stuff with Growing High Point, basically already doing a lot of this work. That's a lot easier to implement earlier than later. And some of these other ones will take a minute to get going. And then Growing High Point is responsible for hiring these folks, the farm manager, worker, and then a business development person. So that's the staffing for that component. All right, so the funding, right? As I mentioned earlier, American Rescue Plan funds, you guys have already gotten half the money. I know Treasury hasn't finalized their guidelines, but I think this part I've highlighted here is certainly still going to be in it about addressing health disparities, social determinants of health. Basically, anything that's focused on low-income communities because of the disparate impacts of COVID-19 is going to be a valid use of money. And I really encourage you guys to think that way when you're thinking about this big chunk of money that the city's getting. It's just a moment to do something innovative. So I just wanted to show the other cities that are utilize this money for kind of equity-focused efforts. These are bigger cities. They already had a report to Treasury about how they were utilizing some of the money. So you can see St. Louis and Boston and Buffalo doing some innovative things. I'm going to try to positively impact their community rather than just filling a budget hole. So there's a number of cities around the country are doing this kind of thinking. So this is not that out of the box in terms of an ask for ARP funds. And so what we're asking for is a 5-year commitment of American Rescue Plan funds. That's almost $4 million. And then kind of in-kind city services like you guys do with the museum. So the first 3 years the ask is be totally funded by ARP funds. And then year 4, 60% ARP funds, year 5, 40%. And then year 6, it would be off on its own other than the in-kind city services. So that's kind of the scope of what we're projecting. The capital is a bit of a guess because we haven't actually been over to the police station to see what's what over there. And also after talking with the health sciences folks, probably a lot more things we need to get done. That was in my head initially. I'm learning a lot talking to folks. So I mean, that's truthfully a bit of a guess as to what may be needed. So anyways, that's kind of the bridge concept that I've been talking about with everybody in town, it seems like, for the past few months. So you guys have any questions about my presentation?
I have.
Councilman Holmes?
Thank you. This is Councilman Holmes. At the presentation, I have two questions. So first was about the life expectancy. That nearly 2-decade differences from within our city.
That's correct. Yep.
That's
It's shocking.
from our, I guess, poor census tract to our most affluent census tract.
That's correct.
Is nearly a 2-decade difference life expectancy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty stark.
It is.
And that should concern anyone who hears that.
Right. Well,
That
yes,
within the
definitely.
scope of a city, of our population, that we have citizens that are dying nearly 2 decades earlier than other citizens because of resource
That's right.
allocation.
I'll also add, it's not just death, it's also obesity,
So-
it's diabetes, it's
Right,
so
exactly.
many
Yeah.
things connected, as
Wow,
Carl and Joe Blosser will both attest to. It's
wow.
direct connect.
That is a wake-up call. Secondly, the police station, in your numbers, is any renovations or upfits to the space calculated in the numbers that you would need initially?
Right. Yeah, well, that, like I say, I mean, the capital expenditures are a bit of an estimate. They haven't been in the police station. I mean, I know there's plenty of offices and there's probably some meeting space. I mean, a large element of it is kind of what, for the health sciences, what that needs to look like. And obviously that can evolve over time, right? But certainly for the first year, I'll be meeting with my health sciences folks probably weekly, trying to figure everything out. And then it would probably ramp up over time because that's definitely the most complicated aspect of it. Is the planning and coordination of all that and what that may look like. And maybe actually getting some other funding from somewhere else to do some of these things. I know that the physical therapy clinic was about $2 million that the university raised. So which thankfully I was sitting when I heard that. So yeah, it's just hopefully, I mean, when the police finally get all the way moved out, we can have a, I mean, I had to reach out to Rand McCaslin about getting a tour over there. And just kind of get a sense of things, because that was just my best gut estimate as to what it may take, so, which may or may not be.
So the numbers that you have in your graph, it's just all operational costs.
Right, there's the staffing and then the operation with insurance and all that sort of stuff, yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah.
thank you.
I mean, the staffing cost itself, I mean, particularly because Growing High Point will start raising money from some of those efforts is I guess $300,000 a year for the kind of for the bridge staffing, and so that's not an enormous number. I mean, to raise in year 6, because I think people. I mean, I think this is quite innovative, and it will attract a lot of attention from other funders.
Please.
Patrick, we appreciate you coming in, made an extremely compelling point, man. I mean, just the way you presented not only the data and research, but backed up by a lot of what we're hearing in terms of early interim sort of guidelines from ARP. Certainly, there's no argument that can be made about we need to do something for the zip code 27260. We need to do something about food insecurity, poverty alleviation. I think perhaps what may be the most resounding thing here is how many folks have come out to support today. And this is really just a presentation. But would love to, if I may, Mr. Chair, because I know there's a number of folks here who came in support. Just wasn't sure if there was anyone out there in the crowd from one of the many organizations that are supporting who wanted to offer or add anything to what's been said already today.
You guys want to add anything? Other than 2 thumbs up.
For the people listening, they all gave thumbs up. So I got a couple of other things, just sort of housekeeping that I think people probably will be asking questions about. And I think it's good for us to kind of get it out there answer some of those questions. So when we talk about these buildings, the police department, obviously, we know that that's transitioning. Moorhead, as you know, is a staple in the community, certainly underutilized. So we need a plan to utilize it, but it does serve a lot of other purposes. I think a natural question people would ask is, would this proposal mean that Moorhead Rec Center closes and is no longer open to some of its traditional sort of service offerings that Parks and Rec provide?
No, I mean, definitely not at all. I mean, we just, I mean, the intent is to be able to utilize it for community programming. So we want to, I mean, a lot of that, these details will need to be worked out with Parks and Rec about kind of what's what when we utilize it. But no, that definitely, the intention is not to close it and make it a private facility. So we just want to partner with the city, to really activate the space. It's right in the heart of the community.
Okay, thank you for giving that. I think another sort of conversation, and obviously all the research and data that's been collected already is tremendous. I think there's also a story to be told in regards to the economic impact. You mentioned some of the initiatives for workforce development. You also mentioned that really some of these initiatives could lead to economic development too for some of these businesses to scale, via shared use kitchens, things of that nature. Not that obviously, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to have those numbers. Not if you have them, that's great. But I do know at a certain point, I mean, I think what we know sort of anecdotally is that there's economic impact. Would be glad to know really empirically what the economic impact could potentially look like. And I've got another thought that's not so much a question for Dr. Harmon, but really it's kind of a thought that to your earliest point around, we have a great opportunity, the manna from heaven, as you said, that was a really good line. I can tell you went to church on Sunday. But when you mentioned this opportunity, there was an email correspondence you sent to us months ago that I thought was really helpful too, in which you asked council to consider, and I think you included city leadership on it. What sort of community feedback are we getting in terms of ARP funds? And really, I think certainly, Mr. Chairman, I'm probably tying this over into something that could become another discussion item. But it needs to, I think we talked about what are we doing to get community feedback. I know that the county's got some listening tours going on. They've got one at Southwest coming up this month, and then they'd like to schedule a few more. And actually there's been conversations about them partnering with us. And so I don't know, because I like to be in decorum, but bureaucracy makes me pretty upset when it slows things down. Do we need to, I mean, if anyone else has questions for Dr. Harmon, I think it's appropriate to ask him, but I like for us, if need be, to suspend the rules to actually talk about this, because we should be talking about hearing from our community like ASAP.
We should be talking about what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
Hearing from our community ASAP.
Oh,
We don't have anything
yeah.
lined up to get feedback on what they think we should be doing with the
Yeah.
$23 million plus we're gonna have.
So I have a question, if I may. Okay, first of all, great. I mean, it's so comprehensive. It pretty much just, the bridge pretty much deals with all the needs together in one comprehensive plan, and I think it's amazing. If this question is for staff, where are we with our ARP fundings? What has been allocated so far? What are some projects that have come in? Where are we with ARP funding?
Councilmember Peters, it's my understanding that we have not allocated any of the funding. We have received the first tranche, which was right around $11 million. And until we had received the final guidance, we hadn't appropriated the funds to any projects or programs. We were planning to bring that back before council for further discussion. So you'll have the opportunity to discuss projects to consider, but at this time, we haven't done any or allocated or spent any of those dollars.
And they're thinking that some of that final guidance, we may get it this fall, right? They're thinking that.
Ideally,
Yeah.
I think we were expecting it earlier, but it just hasn't come down.
So, and I'm sorry, were you done, Monica? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was done.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah.
So to your point, Madam Manager, you mentioned, we get final guidance and then council can start discussing what we should do with projects. I think right in between those two things should be what sort of things are we hearing from the community? And I think that's why I probably jumped ahead to that point, because at a certain point, we will get that final guidance. And if we then wait to get the final guidance and then say, let's hear from our community, we're really just delaying a step that inevitably needs to happen regardless of what the final guidance says. Like, we need to hear from our community, I think. And so, I mean, Madam Attorney, I want to make sure I'm following rules here. And maybe, Madam Manager, you all can give clarification. What is our beeline to us starting the process of setting up, hearing from our community, like whether it's partnering with the county on some of their events, because they haven't scheduled their next two, but they've mentioned that they'd be welcome to doing some partnering on that. Us hosting our own. I mean, and really, I'm asking you because I don't want to be out of line, and because I know we're still on one discussion item, Mr. Chair. I apologize for that. But also, if it's not even something that this committee actually needs to talk about, Madam Manager, you're like, oh, we can coordinate that without any council action, then that's great.
You would have to notice that, but really whatever combination council would prefer. But it would just have to be noticed like a public meeting.
So it's my understanding it would need to be noticed as a public meeting if the full council was participating in those. I think if you were planning to have a structure where you were going to hold listening sessions that were open to the public, but it wasn't necessarily a meeting that would include every member of council attending, then there's a way that you can do those. You just kind of have community forums. You may have, staff there if you are participating in meetings that are already scheduled, for instance, with the county. Then there are ways to do that. I think the first decision that would need to be made is there being consensus among the council on what process that you as a body would like to use, whether or not you want to participate in piggybacking off of meetings that are already established, or whether or not you want to establish a meeting schedule of your own, and then providing that guidance, and then staff could plan from there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump right out there and maybe ask for some recommendations on that. Certainly, I like, in the spirit of efficiency, if partnering with the county on some of the listening sessions makes sense. It may also behoove us that we find it important to do some listening sessions other places at other times, just depending on how those partnering sessions go. But certainly, I think city staff, you all know what's well within your capacity and purview, and be able to come back, I think, with some recommendations. I think that would be my ask, and perhaps do we need to just suspend rules to add that kind of motion, or is it one of those things that council?
At least have Patrick sit down.
I'm fine.
You have kind of taken the floor away from.
That's fine. I'm just standing up here just in case you have another question. I'm fine.
Can we
What I-
finish this issue before
I have
we move on
$3.
to
I'm used to
another
standing around. So it's not,
What I would suggest for conversation is to have us bring back some options for that first meeting in October. I don't know that I could be able to get those ready for you for
By
Monday
Monday,
night.
yeah.
I would love to, but I don't want to commit to that and then not have the opportunity to be able to get staff together to be able to provide those recommendations. But I think definitely by the meeting in October, we could have some recommendations for you on how we could carry out that process.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Harmon, thank you for all the free marketing advice and
Appreciate it.
I always tell you guys, I'm here to help. I don't know. Believe me, sometimes they're not.
Any further comments for Dr. Harmon about the bridge project? I'll close by saying thank you. As always, the work you do is exemplary. Everything that Hayden Harmon Foundation does is top of the line, fantastic work. And thank everybody that came today. You as well. What can I say that